My mother is scraping a piece of burnt toast out of the kitchen window. This is not an occasional occurrence. A once in a while hiccup in a busy Mother's Day. My mother burns the toast as surely as the sun rises. In fact, not sure I've ever seen butter without black bits in it. Once that warm, salty butter has hit your tongue, you're smitten. A putty in their hands. It is impossible not to love someone who makes toast for you. Food is closely related to memory. We have all had the experience where the taste of a certain food brings the past rushing back. In this cutting of the novel Toast by Nigel Slater, the author uses his sense of taste to recall his relationship and memory of his parents. Toast by Nigel Slater. Cakes hold the family together. I really believed it did. My dad, different man when there was cake on the table. Warm. The sort of man you'd rather hug than shy away from. There was something about the way that my mom put cake on the table that made me feel everything was, well, safe, secure, unshakable. Even when her and my father used to go out for long walks, and they'd walk ahead of me in hushed tones and unshakable, even when she got to the point where she had to carry her inhaler in her left hand all the time. My mother is buttering bread for bread pudding. The vigor with which she slathers that soft yellow fat in a thinly sliced white bread is as near as she gets to the pleasures of actually serving for someone you love. My mother's way of buttering has both an ease and an awkwardness about it. She has softened the butter so that it forms a smooth wave as you draw it across, and then the rest she uses in the morning for toast. And the funny thing is that none of us really eats much bread and butter. It's as if it's some ritual of good housekeeping that my mother has to go by. It's as if my grandmother's dying words were, make sure there's enough bread and butter on the table. I love bread pudding. I love its layers of sweet quivering custard, its juicy raisins, its puffed golden crust. I love the way it sings quietly in the oven, the way it wobbles on the spoon. You can't smell a hug and you can't hear a cuddle, but I reckon if you could, it would smell and sound of bread pudding. A great deal was made of me being tucked in at night. I'll come up and tuck you in was as near as my mother ever got to playing with me. I mean, it was her substitute for going to the park, playing cards, making cakes, brownies, carving Halloween pumpkins. I mean, I'll come up and tuck you in was fine. But it's when she forgot that it wasn't. At least twice a week, my mother would make mashed potatoes and pile it in great buttery could-like mounds next to the breaded pork chops. It was the one thing that my mother couldn't get wrong, but then again, good mashed potatoes isn't about cooking. It's about the ability to beat lumps out of a cooked potato. Anyone could do that. Except, apparently, a school lunch lady. There was no moment so perfect as when you would take your fork and just swirl around the mashed potatoes and let that dark gravy just drip all over it, pressing it with your fork, letting it squish between the prongs. One day I came home from school to find my mother in the kitchen with her head in her hands. She was just breathing slowly, deeply. It was as if she had to shut down the rest of her senses to concentrate. Today the potatoes were grainy, salty, wet but possessed of a dry, almost powdery feel in the mouth. One day I came home for lunchtime and I found my mother in her bedroom. This time she had her elbows and her knees, and she was breathing so hard with this grasp. And it was on that day that she told me that I was going to have to stay for school lunch. couple of nights before Christmas. I'm snuggled down in my bed and the sheets are all wrapped up around my ears and I'm all warm and snuggly, and outside I can still see the frost twinkling under the street lights, and I can see all the frostbite around my window in my bedroom, and I could feel my warm breath in the back of my hand. And something told me that Santa Claus would come early this year. What with Mom not feeling so well, and then doctors talking about oxygen tanks, and then my father always looking so miserable, and then just everybody looking so miserable. So he knew he had some cheering up to do. My Christmas stocking is actually a cotton pillowcase. Santa always leaves it at the bottom of my bed, and last year there was a spirograph, a green MG convertible, and Legos. That year I was hoping for hush puppies, the brown suede ones with the black elastic on the side like my friend. As I woke up, I pulled my sheets and I looked over my bed and I saw no cotton pillowcase or scattering boxes. Just Dad, sitting there with his head in his hands, sobbing. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't even know what was happening. I just remember my brother scooping me up, taking me in his minivan to my aunt's house, and that was that. Meals were eaten in silence. Every time I would say thank you or yes please, everyone just looked down at the floor like I was committing some sort of terrible faux pas. 2 days later, my brother came and collected me to go back home, and my father left me upstairs to get ready for bed. This was to be the first time, aside from the last few nights, that my mother had failed to come up and give me a kiss goodnight. As I snuggled down into my bed, I looked at my bedside table and there was 2 white marshmallows sitting there. I had never been allowed to eat in bed, so when my father came upstairs, I asked him if they were for me, and he said, "Of course they are. I know they're your favorites." They weren't. And he knew it. But I had, in a school essay written shortly before my mother's death, described them as being the nearest food to a kiss. Each night for the next 2 years, it would be 2, sometimes 3, white marshmallows at my bedside table. It was their goodnight kiss that I miss most. Not her hugs or her cuddles. No mashed potatoes. No Christmas cakes. No pancakes. No piece of burnt toast.